Westminster, home of the British government, where laws are passed and history is made.
We'll fight on the beaches.
To show that we will stand up for what we know.
It's really impossible if you put your mind to it. I was the future once.
But what is it really like to go to work in the most iconic building in Britain? We followed Mark Pawsey, Member of Parliament for Rugby, to gain an unprecedented insight into the working life of an MP.
And I hereby declare that Mark Julian Francis Pawsey is elected MP for the Rugby constituency.
Mark Pawsey is a member of the Conservative Party and was first elected in 2010. Following in the footsteps of his father, he represents his hometown of Rugby.
Mr. Mark Pawsey.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to be able to speak for the first time in this chamber as a member for the new seat of Rugby. I often have to explain to people that I represent a town rather than a sport. I grew up in a family when we would always sort of have a political discussion around the kitchen table. I've got 5 brothers, and so we'd always have a bit of a family argument. I did follow my dad's career, but I tended to get more involved with my dad in what happened in the constituency in Rugby than down here in Westminster.
Would my right honourable friend therefore assure the House, in her usual forthright and robust way, that the defence of the United Kingdom remains safe in her hands?
I agree with the implication behind my honourable friend's question that times of great uncertainty are times when we need to keep up our defences, both conventional.
Right, well, I'm just about to make the journey down to Rugby Station to catch the train down to London in the same way as my dad would have done several years ago when he was representing. I normally go down to London at lunchtime on a Monday. Parliament starts at 2:30. The train takes 50 minutes. I can catch the 1:23 and be in the chamber for the start of business. I have a flat in London. I'm there so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night. Business often finishes late. We can be voting at 10 o'clock. Each vote can take about 15 minutes. We often vote 2 or 3 times. So it's a long working day.
Mark splits his time between his constituency and office at number 1 Parliament Street.
No 2 parliamentary days are the same. The first hour of Parliament is questions to a minister. On a Wednesday, questions are to the Prime Minister, so we will have a very interesting Wednesday this week when Theresa May, as the new Prime Minister, will be answering questions for the very first time. Everybody wants to be able to ask the Prime Minister a question, and I'm afraid one of the things about the way Parliament works is sometimes a bit of a lottery, and it's in order to ask a question at PMQs, you need to have submitted a request to ask the question. There are 650 MPs. I reckon each week about half of them will try and ask the Prime Minister a question. There's probably time for maybe 15 or 20 to get called, and so you can just do the maths, and the chances of getting a Prime Minister's question are quite difficult. I have to meet people in town, actually, in Rugby, who say to me, next Wednesday, please would you ask the Prime Minister this? And I have to explain that it's not always that simple, but I have had the opportunity to ask questions, really what I try and do is make certain that there's a good reference to some of the things that are going on in Rugby when I do so.
Mark Pawsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Prime Minister about Ruby. Ruby is one of my youngest constituents. She is just 1 month old. Why should Ruby face the prospect of spending her entire working life paying off the debt that's been built up by this generation?
I think Ruby, it's absolutely right to care about Ruby. When we became the government, 1 in 4 pounds spent by the government was borrowed money. We had one of the biggest budget deficits anywhere in the world, and it's always easy for people to say, put off the difficult decisions.
Away from the
don't make any
chamber,
spending
Mark is
cuts.
responsible for local issues. Today, he is hosting a Q&A session in Westminster with tour guides from Rugby.
For an MP, their maiden speech is in many ways the easiest speech they will ever make, because you say nice things about your predecessors, which was dead easy for me because one of them was my dad. You say nice things about your constituency. Well, that was also dead easy because I'd lived there all my life. And you then set out what what your aspirations are for your constituency. And one of the things I spoke about was, as somebody who's quite keen on rugby the game, a desire to improve the links between the town and the game.
Rugby is unique as the only place to have given its name to an international sport, and already receives many overseas visitors, particularly from rugby-playing countries, who make their way to the Closett's Rugby School, where William Webb Ellis picked up the ball and ran.
What's he doing? Don't worry, Johnny. That'll never take off.
Mark also has his own personal motives for developing the links between rugby and the game.
I'm the chairman of the Commons and Lords Rugby Club, and that's a bit about just keeping our club going. And we have a team of number of MPs, and we play against the parliaments of the teams that England play against in the morning of the Six Nations. We're just about to have a new visitor attraction, which will be World Rugby's Hall of Fame, which is coming to the town later this year, and that will give us a real reason for people to come and visit rugby. And there's a great commercial opportunity then, of course, because people, when they come, spend money in our hotels, our restaurants, in our shops, in our town centres, and bring some extra economic activity into the town. I think it's for every MP to find out the areas that they want to get involved in, and so my passions are certainly the connection between rugby and the game. I ran a small business, making sure there's an environment for small businesses to grow and thrive, and when I was at university I was covering things like land use and planning, so I've taken a particular interest in housing planning and development through committee work here in Westminster.
Today, Mark is putting some committee work into action by attending a drop-in session with homeless support charity Crisis.
But often one of the biggest problems is their ability to get hold of the deposit, because
That's right,
private
yeah.
rented sector are looking for a deposit. So can you help people overcoming that hurdle?
We are very fortunate that the landlords that we work with at the moment, we've built up a real trust with those landlords that we don't.
I mean, there are people who are homeless in rugby, and we know that, and there are some great charities doing some very good work. What perhaps I might do now is take the information that I've heard from Crisis about this particular scheme, and ensure that some of the agencies in rugby are aware of it, so that they can work with private sector landlords, so that the private rented sector can become an option for people who are homeless. I have a lot of confidence in you then, because most private sector landlords would be rather concerned about tenant for the first time who perhaps hasn't got used to paying rent, hasn't got the deposit. That represents quite a risk to the landlord. So presumably you've got to allay those fears as far as the landlord's
and we have a
concerned.
dedicated worker who's at the other end of the phone that the landlord can ring up.
I mean, one of the reasons why we do have homelessness is that we haven't built enough houses. We've been running behind for a number of years, and one of the things that I'm quite pleased about is that rugby's doing its bit. We are taking the housing build figures very seriously, and have allocated land for housing. We've got some particular big site that just about starting now. So if we can increase supply, then we're going to make the chances of people being homeless reduce. But at the same time, the balance needs to be right. We need houses for purchase for the market sector, and houses for private rent, and we also need to continue to make socially rented houses available as well.
Whilst adhering to government targets such as housing figures, Mark's team also have to tackle a variety of more immediate issues that are brought to his attention by residents.
It's the most popular topics this month, and the EU referendum almost makes up a quarter of all inquiries we've had.
Right.
And council housing issues still makes up a large majority as well.
Okay, well we know that there's a shortage of housing, and we need to build more houses. And
yes.
So we chatted in our casework meeting about the pressures on housing, and as a country we haven't built enough houses over generations almost, and I'm pleased that rugby's doing its bit to improve the housing supply, and we've got a big site where work is just about to start on what's known as the old mass site.
The last few details on our new office.
Well, it's all changed.
We've looked at naming this new community Halton, which is where the first transatlantic telephone call was received in Maine, USA.
And the heritage bit is just that, there's more to rugby than just the game of rugby football. We spent a bit of time today looking at rugby's heritage in terms of the game, but this is a bit of rugby's heritage that's perhaps not quite so widely known, but incredibly important. I remember being told that signals went around the world from rugby, and lots of people will know and identify with the mass site in lots of different ways. So we're really looking forward to the contribution that the development here is going to make to our town. This keeps the market moving, and of course there will be people, rugby residents, who will move here, be attracted by the new homes and the new facilities here. That creates a vacancy in the town and it keeps the market moving and developing. And one of the interesting things is, perhaps if you'd like to pan out over this side, we've got industrial development over on the Durf site there. So this is one of very few sites where we've got housing development going hand in hand with commercial development. So it's important that the infrastructure is provided early, and I think Richard was saying that should be delivered around about 2019, when the first homes are completed, and we really need to make it easy for people to get into Rugby Town Centre, because we want them to come there and spend their money and be part of our town. Well, I'm in Rugby, and I'm usually here Monday mornings, sometimes Thursday afternoon, here all day Friday, and I wander around town, and it's inevitable that somebody will stop me and want to have a bit of a chat about what's happening in the news.
Morning, Adam. Hello. How are you?
Good. Yourself? Good. And how's things going?
Good.
And how's the housing market?
Not too bad.
Right.
Not too bad.
Okay.
Not much fallout from
June
yet.
Well, I was going to ask you whether or not Brexit had made any difference.
The old investor's been a bit more cautious with what they're buying and what price.
Right.
And anecdotally, we've heard a couple of agents have had people trying to renegotiate, or investors trying to renegotiate on their purchase to give them a bit of comfort. But good news stuff like the Mars site will be great. Right. Families and communities and amenities, which have to come with housing.
Mark's office hold regular casework meetings to analyse all incoming communications from residents.
Good afternoon, Mark Pawsey's office. This is just a simple map which shows you where most of the casework's been coming from.
Okay.
The majority is coming from the centre of Rugby.
Okay.
However, there has been a spike in Hill Morton where we don't normally get as many.
It's always nice when somebody appreciates the work that you've done on their behalf, particularly through casework, and sometimes we can make a change in people's lives, and a little note or email just to say thanks is really positive. And often it's my team, I've got a team around me who support me in my work, as Nicola here in London, and then 3 staff supporting me in Rugby, and very often it's the work that they've done that's able to get the result the constituents are so happy with.
A recent problem that Mark and his team faced was an issue of road safety in a residential area of the town.
One of the students at the college down the road was knocked by a car as they were trying to weave in and out of the traffic. So that was something we discussed with you, and you took it to our local council and petitioned them to try and sort out the problems.
Well, what's happened here is that we had parking this is a new road, parking on the side of the road, which was causing a real obstacle, and I'm sure you'll see from the traffic that's going by, it's a pretty busy road already, and we've petitioned the local authorities to get the double yellow lines down. That's now happened. That in itself has now created a bit of a problem, which is that people who were parking there are now looking for other places to park, and that may give us a fresh job to do. But that's part and parcel of your role as an MP. You get involved in all sorts of issues, and this is a very simple one, and an example of where we were able to put some pressure and to get a resolution which has brought an improvement in the immediate area. I mean, my motivation is the fact that I represent my hometown, and I want to see Rugby continue to be a great place for people to want to live, and that we have good facilities there. I also ran a business, and I'm a great believer in sort of wealth creation, businesses as the driver of our economy, and I want to see people have opportunities. I want everybody to have the chance to do what they want to do.
From his success as a businessman Mark strives to provide employment opportunities for people of all backgrounds.
We're doing very well on employment in rugby, and a bit of that is the quality of our communications network. We've got a lot of logistics business here, but one of the things I'm quite keen to do is to see a balance to our economy. So we want to encourage manufacturing. That's been a big theme of the government, is to get manufacturing based here again, and that's starting to happen as businesses reshore. That's the things that they were perhaps having manufactured overseas are now being made back in the UK once again. So there are lots of business opportunities, but a place like this will often provide people with their first job, working behind a bar. Plenty of people have done it when they've been students. Having a vibrant nighttime economy is a balance to the more traditional parts of the economy that we were used to seeing.
Whilst new development is essential for rugby's economy, part of Mark's role is to challenge resistance and reassure constituents that change can be positive.
They're going to come all the way to rugby.
Well, absolutely, because if they don't, then I'm not supportive of the development. I think, and that's why I was very supportive of getting this relief road that comes in.
Well, too easy for people to say, no, we don't want that. We want to leave things as they are. We don't want change. But this is a fundamental part of rugby. That it isn't a bit of development on the edge of the town. It becomes part of the town. The people who move in here early will come into rugby, do their shopping. They use the schools, use all of the facilities, and become a fundamental part of the town. And that way we can get lots of benefits from the development.
One of the reasons why I think people reject development is because they're very scared of it. They're worried. People, if you say to people, would you rather go for a change or have something stay as it is? Most people will say stay as it is, but you can't just stay as it is. You've got to move.
My role is talking to my constituents, listening to what they've got to say and responding to what they've got to say, but also getting to the meetings and to the in the chamber to raise the issues that people give me, and being able to get on with that is incredibly important. Having a good team around me, it enables me to do that.
Whilst juggling his parliamentary agenda with the concerns of residents, Mark must also maintain his public image and the image of the Conservative Party in rugby.
This is getting ready for 2017 county council elections.
Yes.
So we've done a leaflet already and a survey. What sort of feedback have we had back?
It's early days.
MPs never stop campaigning. There's an election every 5 years, and there's talk actually right now that we might have an election before 2020. So making certain that we are in campaign mode, that we are, I've got leaflets ready to go out, that we're out on the doorsteps talking to constituents, is always very important. And then we've got other target divisions where we're going to be having teams out, knocking on doors, delivering leaflets. Traditionally, political campaigning is about knocking on doors and handing out leaflets, but we live in an era of social media now. So I have a presence on Twitter, I have a presence on Facebook, quite an active website. Of course, I don't do all of those things myself. I have a lot of help with my team who are here to support me. So we've got different ways of getting in touch with different voters, and that's very important. We can't just carry on doing things the same way. There are different ways in which people want to be engaged.
Engaging people in politics is a recurrent theme within Mark's work as an MP, and he is motivated to continue to do good work for rugby and its constituents.
It's an absolutely fascinating job. It opens doors. It takes you to places that in another walk of life you simply wouldn't get to go or get to understand. But it's a never-ending job. You're always an MP. A great friend of mine is a farmer who describes being a farmer as a way of life rather than a job, and being a politician is equally a way of life rather than just a job.
It is clear that Mark sees no challenge as too big and approaches every obstacle with the same mindset. Mark and his team have their eyes firmly on the 2020 elections, and preparations to campaign are already underway. Mark is an ambassador for rugby and sees his role as a privilege to represent the town that he loves.